This is a video for how to go about creating a case for your Starburst candies through the top-down method in Fusion for the Suite Improvement project for your engineering class. I would like for you to notice that I have my Starburst case project open, and within that project you can see that I have, the assembled candies from a previous video that I created. Then I also have the individual Starburst candies here that we created that assembly from. Now, in order for us to start the top-down method to create the case that would go around the outside, I want to have a untitled design file open, and we're going to go ahead and say save, and I'm going to call this Starburst case base is what I want to deal with, because we're just going to call this the base for now, and I'm going to go ahead and say save, because we will eventually be creating multiple pieces for this assembly. There'll be two parts that fit together. Now what we need to do is drag and drop that candy assembly we did in a previous video out into the design space. So I'm just going to drag and drop that out into the design space and leave it. And I want you to notice before right as we drop that out, the Starburst case now goes, oh, we're in assembly now, and also it says I see a sub-assembly down here that is a candy assembly. So we have an assembly within an assembly, so this candy assembly would be known as a sub-assembly within a larger assembly file. Sometimes I will refer to this as the global assembly, which would be up here at the top. Now there's multiple ways that you can go about making a case, and it all depends on how you want to take the Starbursts out of the case. If I want to keep mine vertical, just kind of a straight up and down method, I can keep it like that. If I want to rotate this flat and say, people are going to be taking the candies out, more of a horizontal way than a vertical way, I could leave them here. For the sake of the video, I'm going to bring mine back up to vertical, and I'm going to say OK. Again, I want you to notice we have the candy assembly here and we have the main global assembly here. If I wanted to go in and edit any of the candies, I could go into this sub-assembly and then go in and start editing candies from here. To go back into what I will call the global assembly, I can go back up to Finish, Edit, and Place. And now we're back in the main assembly. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use the existing geometry of this assembly to go in and create a case around the outside. Now, to start with the top-down method, we're going to go into creating a new component within an assembly. So on the Assemble menu up here at the top, the very first option we have is something called New Component. You can also see that icon right next to Joint up here in the main menu. We're going to click on New Component, and we're going to keep this type a standard component, and we're going to highlight Component 1, and we're going to call this Exterior Case. And we're going to go ahead and say OK. And when we do that, it's going to look like our candy assembly. It looks like it's made out of water. And I want you to also notice that now we have ourselves just a component in this larger assembly that's the Starburst case. We have the candy assembly, and we have now just a separate component. Now, before we start actually sketching any geometry, I want to go up to Modify and go down to Change Parameters, because we're going to identify some, we're going to identify some things, some names of some assemblies that will make this more of an efficient process for us as we go. So we're going to click on plus, and I'd like you to write the word in all lowercase thickness. Now remember, Fusion is case sensitive, so if we capitalize the letter T every time you went in and type thickness, you'd have to capitalize the letter T. Now for this expression, I just want to start out putting in 0.05. We're just going to give it an arbitrary value. We can always go back and change this. We're going to put in 0.05. Now, the next one we're going to do is we're going to hit plus, and I want you to write the word gap. And for the expression, we're going to put in 0.01. And this will make a little bit more sense when we start sketching out some geometry. We're going to go ahead and say OK. So we have two user parameters that we have created. You are the user of Fusion, and you have created some boundaries that our geometry will have to follow. We're going to go ahead and say OK. I would like for you to note, again, that we are in the exterior case. You can see this little bubble highlighted right here. We are not in the main assembly. We are only dealing with one component, which is the exterior case. Let's go to Create Sketch. And as I drag out, I want you to notice that Fusion will start to see the geometry of the sides and everywhere else. I want you to act like you're on top of the object here. If you can tell right here, I am on top. I'm not messing with any of the origin planes you see down in here. I'm only up here on top, and I'm going to click, and that's going to rotate for us. It's as if though I'm looking straight down on the top of the candy assembly, like over here on the left. I'd be right on top of this yellow piece. Now, I want to make sure that I have access to all of the geometry that is around the top of the object. I want to hit the letter P on my keyboard, and I'm just going to drag in the middle here of my top of my Starburst candies, and I'm going to click. And Fusion tells me we see one geometric shape, which was the square, and we're going to say OK. Now, I want to offset just this square. We're not going to do too much actual drawing of anything. We're going to use existing geometry for a lot of this. And we're going to click on offset to start. And I want you to click until when you see the square highlight, we're going to click and we're just going to kind of drag out a little bit. And I want you just to write the word gap. And when I start writing the word gap, you can see where it actually shows me, oh, I see a gap dimension that you've done. And what we want is this little gap of space around the outside. And what gap is going to mean is how much of an air gap are we going to give the Starburst candies between the actual material that we create and the candy itself. We're going to go ahead and say OK. Now we're going to go to offset again. And I want to offset what we just created, not the interior square, the square we just created. So I'm going to go ahead and go to cancel right there. Let's go here. See if it'll let me, and it's not going to let me. So let's just go ahead and go to offset. Let's just go ahead and choose the interior square again. And we're going to drag out. And I want you to do this just to kind of get around that. It didn't want me to offset. Didn't want me to offset what we just offset. We're just going to leave this here, and we're going to say OK. And it's going to automatically give me a dimension. I want to delete that dimension. We're just going to go in and create our own dimension here. You can hit the letter D on your keyboard, or you can go to create and go down to dimension. There's multiple ways to do this. And here's the dimension we're going to create. We're going to create from the gap to the outside edge of what we just offset. And we're going to click, and we're going to hit the letter T on our keyboard. And when you start typing, I just hit the letter T and look what shows up. Thickness 0.05. Just click on that and hit enter. And that is the thickness of the material right now. That's what we've basically kind of given ourselves an idea of what the dimension is that we want. This will be very convenient for us momentarily. We're going to go ahead and say Finish Sketch now. Let's grab a hold of our house button. I'm going to hit the letter E on my keyboard for extrude, and I want to zoom in, and I just want to make sure you only have the outside and you have not selected that gap. Do not select the gap. Now, I don't really know what the distance is all the way down here towards the bottom, and it really doesn't matter right now, because what I'll do is I'm going to go to Extent, and I'm going to go to Object, and I'm going to use a corner of my view cube, and I want to click on the very bottom of the object, and I want you to notice it just found the bottom. It extruded that distance all the way down to the bottom. If I come back up to the top, you'll notice that we have that air gap between the material and the candies. Now we're going to stay in new body. We're not going to say join because we do want to create for ourselves a new body over here. We only want one body. There's not really even a body to look at right now, but there will be once we say OK. Come over to bodies. We now have ourselves a body. We can name our body here in a second. We might do that here in a minute. So next thing we'll do, we need to create a little bottom on this thing. We got to give this thing some kind of a bottom. So we're going to go to Create Sketch. And we're going to click on this surface right here, let it turn. I'm going to hit the letter P on my keyboard. I want to make sure I get all the outside geometry. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to go to Finish Sketch. I'm going to hit the letter E on my keyboard. I'm going to zoom in. We want to make sure that we get both squares. Notice it's going to get the gap too. That is perfectly fine. And the distance that we want out from the side, this is where using your view cube is your friend. I'm going to flip this out, and I'm only looking at the side, and we're going to extrude out this way. Now for distance, what I want to do is just hit the letter T, because I want that thickness to be the same as my walls that I have for the other part. And notice how it automatically sees that. Now I don't want to create a new body. We're just going to leave this here, and I'm just going to say OK. I'm going to click on my house button. Nice. So we have ourselves our exterior case, and we've kind of created that on the outside edge. I want you to note that we are only in the exterior case right now. Let's go up to the main assembly. So when I drag my mouse up here and I'm just hovering here, you can see this little kind of empty circle shows up. If I fill that empty circle and I tap out in the white space, you can see now that I have our assembly. And that is a top-down method. I can even see our little gap in here. Kind of tough to see, but when I rotate a little bit, I can now see that gap. It's a pretty cool thing. Now, let's go up to Modify, and let's go down to Change Parameters. And I just want to take a look over here. So right now we have as our thickness 0.05. What if I said, I want that thickness to be a little bit bigger. Actually, I'm going to go 0.02 and hit Enter. Look what happened. The whole thing adjusts just within parameters. So I can say, that thickness looks a little bit too big. Let's go 0.03. I've shaved off a little bit of the edges. Kind of a nice, little example of how we can go about doing some basic modifications. Just some basic modifications within the main design. Now for me, if you ask me, that gap does look a little bit too thick, but what if I want to slice the difference? I can go 0.015 and hit Enter. and our entire design is going to adjust. Note that we didn't have to come down here and right click and go to edit sketch and do all that stuff. We can all do that consistently within parameters. So, kind of a cool thing to do. One other quick thing I want to touch on within parameters. Shouldn't have got out of that. Let's jump right back in. So within parameters over here, we have user parameters for thickness and the gap. Now here down on the bottom, for that second extrusion, this what you'll see the letter D in these numbers. That means, that was the 8th dimension we play. So this is dimension 8, dimension 9. They just abbreviate that with the letter D. So if I go to a side view here and I say, I don't really want the full thickness on the bottom. I want that to be a little bit thinner. I can come in here for thickness and actually give me the thickness divided by 2 and hit enter and it will automatically adjust for me. Kind of a cool thing to see. So if by chance I wanted the bottom to be thinner for some reason, like I don't need a robust, bottom, I could, change that just to divide it by 2. If I say, actually I want that to be a little bit thicker, I can go times, let's say 0.125, just times 1/8 of an inch, and it might give me a little bit more of a thickness. Actually, that one actually made it thinner. Excuse me. I can say times, 1.2 and hit enter, and that'll make it more thick. I can multiply it times. My initial putting it in there for a decimal actually took mass away. But that is the concept that we're going with. Now, when we're done, let's go ahead and say OK. We're going to go up to the Inspect tool, and I'm going to go to Section Analysis. And we're going to click on the side of the object, and we're going to drag in about halfway. And I'm going to turn and look at my front view. And I'm going to say OK. And notice I can see through a section view that gap and exactly how much space those candies have to move. Now our goal for our Starburst case is that, it holds the candies, but when I shake it, it doesn't rattle the candies around. So only we can actually say through going into modify and going to change parameters again, what is that thickness gap just this air gap right here that we're willing to accept. And this is where the part of the difficult part design comes in. This is through some trial and error. So notice that once you say OK with that, it stays in that section view. The way to get out of this is I can come over here to where it says analysis. And I click this little arrow next to analysis and I have a section view right here. I can go ahead and just turn off that section view. Let's just say for the sake of discussion, I wanted a top-down section view. I'm going to go to section analysis. I'm going to click right here on the top. I'm going to drag straight down and I'm going to say OK. I can kind of turn this and get myself an idea of what it looks like right there in the middle. I can turn off this section analysis here. You can also name them. So I can just kind of tap once and then tap again. I can call this one side. I can just tap once and tap again. It's not a fast double click, and I can call this one top. Give myself my names of my objects. So this has been a video for how to go about creating just the base, because we'll go further into this with a slider or a snapping kind of case mechanism for the top and how we're going to join this. So this has been a video for how to go about creating just the base element of the exterior case for your Starburst candies for your suite improvement project for your engineering class.